Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice for radio. So today, we're going to be taking another look at Lieutenant Surge. And ladies and gentlemen, we did our video about Lieutenant Surge the other day. I showed you what it was, I introduced you to it, I explained why it was such a gosh darn good card, but I told you I didn't have time to go through all of the silly combinations that you can play around with if you're playing Lieutenant Surge's strategy. Well, the good news is I've got a little bit more time on my hands today, so let's have a look at some of the dumb things that you can do with Lieutenant Surge's strategy. Now, for those of you that have forgotten, it is a supporter card that lets you play 3 supporter cards, including Lieutenant Surge's strategy. You get to play Lieutenant Surge's strategy, and if you do, you can then play 2 extra supporters during your turn. And we all know supporters are good, they have to be. You're only allowed to play 1 supporter during your turn. If they weren't good, that would be a little bit silly. So how about using Metagross and playing 2 Steven's Resolve? You see, Steven's Resolve is a great card that lets you search your deck for any free cards and put them into your hand. The downside is that if you play this card, your turn ends. In comes Metagross. Metagross has a lovely little ability Extend. As long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, your turn does not end when you play Steven's Resolve. The only thing that turns that ability off at the moment is Slacking, which essentially no one's playing, so we're good in that regard. So what you can do here is you can actually play Lieutenant Surge's strategy and 2 Steven's Resolve to get yourself any 6 cards that you like. To put that into context, Metagross GX has a GX attack on a stage 2 that lets you search for 5 cards, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is a GX attack. That's a little bit silly. And here's the thing, right? Most of the combos we're going to be talking about are going to have one inherent problem, and that is, in order to use that strategy, you need to have Lieutenant Surge and whatever other 2 supporters you want to play in your hand to begin your turn, or at least by the time you play Surge. Here, not a problem. As long as you play 1 Steven's Resolve, you can make sure you've got Lieutenant Surge ready for next turn with 2 Steven's Resolve, so you can guarantee you can essentially use 1 Steven's Resolve to make sure you've got Surge in the other 2, and then you can just grab whatever other cards you want, and you can make this into a ridiculous combo. You can go, hey, I don't actually fancy attacking with Metagross, so what I'm going to do is attack with, I don't know, Buzzwole, because then I can just play a switch and then get Metagross back in the active next turn. And I know I'm going to be able to do that, but because I'm searching for like 6 cards during my turn. Or you can do stuff like making sure you've got a Brawny Pads, which gives you an extra 50 HP if you've got 4 Retreat, which Metagross does. And then making sure you've got a max potion every turn. Because you're attacking for 1 energy and it does 60, then 120, 120, 120, 120, 120. But with Brawny Pads here, you've essentially got 220 HP on a non-GX, which is nuts. And you can be making sure you're searching out your max potion, searching out your Brawny Pads. And then, of course, you can make sure that you've always got anything else you need, whether it's a Guzma to drag something active, because remember, you can play that as well as Steven's Resolve using Lieutenant Surge. I mean, it's so dumb, right? You can play Lieutenant Surge, and then play a Steven's Resolve, search for a supporter card and 2 non-supporter cards, and play the supporter cards you searched for. It's just a little bit over the top, and it guarantees that Metagross is going to have every single thing they ever need. You can play a whole bunch of silly one-offs. You can play 1 Team Skull Grunt and use it when you think your opponent's got energy in their hand. You can play Enhanced Hammer and search it out every time they attach any kind of special energy. You can play Koga's Trap, which is instant poison and confusion, and then play that if you think your opponent can't easily get out the active. This literally does give you endless possibility. Well, not technically endless, but there are like thousands and thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of different combinations of 6 cards that you can get here. It really is a little bit over the top. But if you want a simpler, more straightforward suggestion, how about Double Mina? Mina is a brilliant little supporter card, which allows you to search your deck for a fairy energy and attach it to one of your Pokemon. It doesn't have to be a fairy Pokemon, incidentally. It's any one of your Pokemon. So what you can do here, using Lieutenant Surge's strategy, is just go double Mina and get 2 extra energy on during your turn. Imagine you've got something like a Sylveon here. Sylveon is a little bit redonk, because Sylveon evolves from the Energy Evolution Eevee. So you can attach a Fairy Energy to Eevee, and then you search for this, evolve up, and go. Incidentally, Mina attaches from the deck, not from your hand, so Mina will not activate Eevee's ability. That does need to be stated here. You ain't getting Eevee's ability with this. But then you can play Mina, and you can get a Sylveon going without having to worry about double colorless energy. One of the things I really, really like about Sylveon here is that you've got Magical Ribbon that lets you search your deck for up to 3 cards, and this generally is a Disruption deck. Again, it will like Max Potion, but you can get Crushing Hammer, but you could get that anyway. But what you can do here is have a Team Skull Grunt on the same turn as you play an Ace Roller to heal up your Sylveon. Or maybe you play a Koga's Trap, on the same turn you play a Plumeria to get rid of their energy. And because you're searching out any free cards during your turn, you can guarantee you've got Lieutenant Surge and whichever 2 supporter cards you want to play next turn. So kind of like the Steven's Resolve combo, you're actually going to be able to use this one fairly predictably often because you can search them out. And that's kind of fun. How about a lovely Guzma Ace Roller combo? What you do here is you Guzma one of your opponent's Pokemon into the active, you switch your active to the bench. Hey, while it's on the bench, why don't I Guzma it and heal it up? Or, why don't I Guzma one of their Pokemon, and now I've got a Pokemon in the active that I don't want in the active, Guzma it and put your original Pokemon active. Although do please remember that Ace Roller only allows you to pick up damaged Pokemon, so if there's no damage counters on your active Pokemon, you will not be able to use Ace Roller to grab it. One of my favourite combos, and I believe I may well have mentioned this in the previous video, I probably did, searching for a Guzma, because very often next Guzma wins the game, so you can do something like play Cynthia to try and draw a Guzma and then play it to win the game. It's not quite as over the top as double Mina or double Steven's Resolve, but it's a fun combo nonetheless. If you go into the expanded format, might I suggest double Team Flare Grunt? And really, this is one of the most notorious combos already. Team Flare Grunt lets you discard an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. The problem is, if you don't discard an energy one turn, you can find yourself getting behind with a discard and then potentially losing the game. Sure, you've got Crushing Hammer, but Crushing Hammer's on a coin flip, and if you get a turn where you flip tails on Crushing Hammer, and you combine that with not being able to draw Team Flare Grunt, you could well end up in a situation where you miss an energy discard and then it goes downhill. So what you do here is you double Team Flare Grunt. And remember that in Expanded you've got Versus Seeker, which lets you recover those Team Flare Grunt, and that's a little bit silly. And you might be thinking, well, surely sooner or later you're going to run out of Team Flare Grunt. Well, might I remind you of how dumb Lusamine is with Lieutenant Surge? Again, this was something we hit in the original video. But Lusamine lets you grab 2 supporter cards back into your hand, or Stadium incidentally. So you play Lieutenant Surge, play a Lusamine to get 2 Team Flare Grunt, and then immediately play one of the Team Flare Grunt, knowing you've got 1 for next turn. Or you play Lieutenant Surge, play your final Team Flare Grunt, and then play Lusamine to get 2 Team Flare Grunt ready for the next turn. You can really abuse Team Flare Grunt here. Now, probably my favourite combo is not actually legal. There is a Japanese expanded extra format where Getsis has been unbanned, but other than that, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to use this combo. But I love the combo of Getsis and Delinquent. Getsis lets you look at your opponent's hand, and then they shuffle all of their item cards back into their deck. which will often put them on a very small hand, at which point you can play Delinquent, discard a Stadium in play, and they've got to discard 3 cards from their hands. Now, they have a choice of which cards they discard, but the theory here, the hope here, is that they end up discarding all of their hand, because after a Getsis, they've got 1, 2, or 3 cards remaining. Given that Getsis is banned, do we have an alternate that isn't banned? Yes, we do. How about the combination of Judge and Delinquent? Judge puts your opponent down to a 4-card hand, and then you can immediately play Delinquent to make them discard 3 of them. Now, this isn't a perfect combo, because if your opponent's got, say, 1 Cynthia or 1 Professor Sycamore in hand, then they will be able to draw out of it. They might end up with 1 good card, and then they can just keep that and get back in the game. But unless they do, you can make them basically discard. And even if they do have 1 good card, you're still essentially forcing them into a 4-card hand, and then getting rid of 3 of them to really limit their options to essentially saying goodbye to the rest of their hand and playing a supporter. That is not exactly something that they're going to be able to recover from all the time, and that's kind of the point of this. And that's why this is such a beautiful, beautiful combo. Do remember that without Lieutenant Surge, you could essentially achieve the same result by playing a Mars Shadow to make them shuffle and get a new hand of 4, and then dropping this. That would be an option that they have, but even so, fun combo. So they are some of my favourite combos, some dumb combos to try and pull off with Lieutenant Surge. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, I have not gone through all of them. I couldn't go through all of them, but I would very much like to hear you guys go through all of them. So please do let me know, ladies and gentlemen, in the comment section. Go nuts, but I would ask you to remember the most important rule as always. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WasiPlays, where we're covering Transformers spoilers, some of which are exclusive. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.